is your Classic Metal Show right here on the ClassicMetalShow.com, and that, of course, is brand new stuff from Dirty Honey. That is the main single, I guess. That's When I'm Gone. Band that I've been singing the praises about for about a month now, and a band that I was fortunate enough to catch last week out with Slash. And on the line right now, we have the vocalist of Dirty Honey. We have Marc LaBelle. Marc, how are you, man?
I'm doing good, man. Thanks for having me.
Sure, man. Well, Marc, I told you at you guys' table at the Slash show that I was going to be chatting with you this week, and I'm excited to do so, man. I really enjoyed the show. I thought you guys brought it, considering that basically you started with a lot of faces staring at you, and you had every single ass out of the seats by the end of the show, man. I have to think that has to feel good.
Yeah, it feels good. It's definitely weird. You're feeling really judged, I guess, those first couple tunes, but I think people warm up to the music, and, it's a good town to rock in as well, and I know it's a big rock and roll town, obviously, and,
sure.
They were super receptive to it by the end, so that was great.
Absolutely, man. Well, Marc, Dirty Honey is making a lot of noise right now. I saw that When I'm Gone hit Billboard in the top 10, which is great, and
Yep.
And at the same time, there's probably still just a ton of people that don't know much about Dirty Honey. So why don't we kind of start there? Maybe give us a little history of the band to, clue people in as to just who you guys are.
Yeah, it's kind of a classic LA story. A bunch of guys, our bass player's from LA, grew up there, and I moved there a few years ago, and so did the guitar player. We didn't know each other when we moved, and we all sort of met in LA, started gigging around, and pretty quickly, we all realized we had a love for rock and roll and good old-fashioned rock and roll music, and we decided to start writing some tunes, and that's where it all sort of started, and it's been really fun, and we sort of had a good feeling playing the clubs in LA that people were ready to rock again. So it felt really natural.
Sure. Were you guys all kind of products of, I don't want to say products of the 70s because it makes it sound like it's old music when it's not, but I'll put it another way. You guys are definitely not playing music that is trendy. Were you guys all kind of advocates of the older style of rock and roll when you got together?
Yeah. I mean, I think, certainly we have more contemporary influences like Muse and the Black Keys, and Gary Clark Jr. is great, and, there's definitely others. But, yeah, I mean, I think it's pretty clear that I'm a big Steven Tyler fan, Robert Plant, Jagger, Paul Rogers even, Chris Cornell, that. Those are a lot of the main influences, the Black Crowes. So, a lot of 70s era stuff, a lot of early 90s, maybe late 80s stuff. Guns N' Roses, another huge one. And yeah, everybody sort of shares that passion. So when it comes to writing music, it's not so much like, hey, we want to throw it back. It's just, let's do what's natural,
Sure.
This feels good. I'm not trying to, more than anything, I'm just trying to get away from writing stale sounding rock and roll that I think has become, the more radio friendly genre to, the last 2 decades.
Sure. Now, I just have to ask, man, I'm assuming you guys are all in your, early to mid 20s. How does that happen? How is it that you guys are not highly influenced by Korn, Disturbed, Linkin Park, etc., but have these older influences on your music?
I can't speak for the other boys, but certainly my first show was Aerosmith as a little kid in the late 90s, and I met Steven and Tyler and Joe Perry that day before the show, and that was a huge influence on the rest of my life, just seeing their lifestyle before the show. I met them at a radio station. They were super cool. And then, seeing these truly bona fide rock stars, do their thing on a stage. That's pretty, it's pretty mind-blowing to a young kid, right? And then, and I think there's definitely a difference in Steven Tyler versus Korn or, some of the newer age rock. Even I love Pearl Jam too, and like there's a difference to Steven Tyler and Eddie Vedder. They're both rock stars, but there's something a little more mystic or whatever about Steven Tyler's personality that I'm more attracted to than say, the plaid shirts, the ripped up jeans, and the grunge era.
Right. No question, man.
But I know John's guitar playing he's a big Brian May guy. Jimmy Page is a huge influence. The Slash, the big guitar heroes, and those are the guys that we gravitated to. Absolutely.
And it shines through on the EP that you guys put out. I mean, even the first single, When I'm Gone, it's amazingly catchy. It doesn't sound old, and that's the weird thing, I don't want to compare you guys to Greta Van Fleet or Rival Sons or whatever that you guys are getting a lot of those comparisons to. But I think you guys have a little bit more of an original flavor where people are not just saying, oh, well, they sound like Led Zeppelin, and I have to think for a band like you right now, that's a major plus that you're getting play without getting, comparisons where it almost limits how far you can go.
Yeah, and I think the big compliment we get a lot is like, hey, it doesn't all come in one. Sometimes people have said to me like, oh, you guys are kind of a mix of like the 70s and 90s bands that I grew up loving and they had a baby or whatever, and that's a great compliment. But, you hear people say, hey, they sound a little like Guns N' Roses, but they also sound like the Black Crowes. But there's also some Zeppelin in there, and there's some Aerosmith in there, and it's like kind of all over the place that, bands that I loved, the Stones, Aerosmith, Guns, they all got similar, like, multiple comparisons rather than just one singular influence, that's pinpointable.
Right. Definitely. Now, Mark, when you guys wrote When I'm Gone, did you know automatically that you were onto something that was, a very special song, or was it just one of many that you worked out and it just came out well?
You know what? It's more about, like, when I hear, the guys are always throwing stuff at me to just see, like, hey, what do you think you can sing to, And I'm a big riff guy, and when I heard that riff, I immediately knew, like, hey, we're on to something cool here, right? And then, there's a couple other tracks on the record. I think Heartbreaker and Rolling Sevens and Scars all had a similar sort of catalyst, right? This cool riff that somebody, doesn't necessarily have to be John, somebody throws out there, and all of a sudden you're onto something that you really want to work on, rather than, there's a lot of times, you have a nice melody, maybe there's some chords, and it doesn't, it just lacks like that certain punch.
Sure.
Where, when you have a great riff right out of the gate, you're hitting people over the head with something cool, like in the first second of the song. So it's always a good starting point, and it's definitely a motivator when you have a banging riff like that, for sure.
Sure. And I have to say about that song too, probably the coolest part about that song is right before the solo at the end of the song, where John changes the actual riff, where he adds in that da-na-na-na-na-na-na, that leads to the solo. If there was any chance of you even losing yourself in the song, that pulls you right back to it, man. It's just a cool moment.
Yeah, it's fun, and that was totally his like nod to a certain someone, for sure, that I think if anybody has any sense of musical history, they can probably figure it out. But yeah, it's a good moment for sure too. And that was different from the original demo that we did. That was sort of a last minute adjustment in the studio. So glad you like it.
No, it's very cool, man. And the other one all of them are great. I mean, it's 5 songs. I'll be honest. The only complaint I have at all is that there's not 5 more songs on this thing.
They're common.
I was going to say. Now, why did you guys decide to do an EP? I know that's sort of becoming the new way right now. Is that why you did it, or were you just not ready yet to do 10?
No, I think, we knew we had we actually recorded 7.
Okay.
We think 6 are going to make it. There's one getting released relatively soon, I think.
Okay.
And then, I think the initial sort of goal was to sort of drum up some label interest, and we certainly succeeded in that. But, once When I'm Gone started hitting, thanks to you guys and, you know,
sure,
Spotify and radio stations all over the country, like, it's kind of like, well, we don't really need them to do the heavy lifting anymore. It kind of took care of itself, and
sure.
let's see what we can do on our own. So now that we're in sort of weird position where we're having some success without a label, it's like, I don't know what the next like move is. You know, is it an LP or an EP? You know, that's certainly a conversation that we're going to have pretty soon.
Sure. What do you?
But yeah.
Oh, go ahead. Go ahead.
We knew we had 5 sort of really strong tunes, and
okay.
We didn't want any filler. And when we left, we kind of felt like, you know, any one of these could be singles. Scars is probably the most album cut, you
sure.
know, less single worthy, but I still love, that's probably my favorite song on the record. So.
Okay. Excellent. Now, what do you attribute the fact that you guys have been able to, you know, explode onto the scene? Because let's face it, for a band without a label, I mean, you guys are getting a lot of, I mean, not everybody, you know, there's bands that have been in the business 35 years that haven't played shows with The Who, you know, or Slash or Guns N' Roses or whatnot. And there's a million bands that haven't been picked by the WWE to be the headline song for one of their pay-per-views. I mean, you guys have really gotten whatever it is, that sound or that touch or a great manager behind the scenes or something that's helping propel your band.
Yeah, we definitely have a great manager, but I think, you know, it's more I think it's more like a thirst for rock and roll, man. Like, people have been starving for this music, and I say all the time, like, you can walk around LA at any moment, and there's Rolling Stones and Who, Aerosmith, AC/DC shirts, and, like, people love rock and roll. Like,
sure.
That's never going to change. It's just might not have been, like, what's commercially viable for, like, labels to promote, and, but, you know, I think the crowds really speak for themselves, and tickets, like, there's always a great rock and roll act that's, like, topping the highest grossing tour of the year. You know, that'll never change, and it's like, it just takes the right attitude and the right mixture of people to create something, you know, special. And, you know, we're very young still, and we know
sure.
there's a lot of work left to do, and, you know, but we've had a good run so far. Yeah, it's been literally a dream come true.
Sure.
And we got some good news today that we can't share quite yet, but it's going to add to that resume. And yeah, we're doing okay. But great management, great radio team, you know, and great songs. Really is the big thing. Great songs will triumph anything.
Absolutely, man. Now, as somebody that has seen the band, I will definitely say that you can't fully understand what you guys do unless you see it live, because the record is cool, but the live show is a different animal completely. Do you feel that way as well?
We hear that a lot, which is a super good compliment to everybody except the producer, I think. But yeah, like, I mean, the thing with the record is we wanted it to feel somewhat live, you know, we wanted it to have that. There's something about the Hotel California recording and the stuff on Toys in the Attic and all the Zeppelin stuff that feels live, and the live show should be an enhancement of that. You know, you certainly don't want to go and say, like, the record's better.
Right.
You know, I'm not buying tickets to a band, you know, twice if the first time I saw them I thought the record was better. So
right.
Yeah, we do get that a lot. Like, hey, they're even better live. You know, that's an awesome compliment, and it certainly wasn't intentional. We'd love to have the record be that amazing. I think the record's amazing too, but we get that from time to time, and it's a different energy, you know, versus sitting in the studio recording and playing in front of, you know, 3,000-4,000 people. Like, you're pretty pumped up. So
sure. Now, Mark, I have to imagine that some of these gigs, at least the first ones of the tours, whether it was, you know, the Who, Guns N' Roses, Alter Bridge, Slash, you know, whoever it is. I mean, you know, for you as a singer, you're in front of Axl Rose, Roger Daltrey, Miles Kennedy. I mean, as a singer, that has to be intimidating somewhat to have to open for any one of those guys. No?
Yeah, No, I mean, I've heard Chris Robinson talk about his like early years, and he opened for like Robert Plant and Steven Tyler within like the first 6 months of even being, professionally in a band. So it's a pretty similar situation. Yeah, it's exciting. It's stressful. It's at the same time, I feel like I have something to prove. So there's a little extra, just panache or gusto or whatever behind the performance when you're going up there, and Miles is like one of the best rock and roll singers out there.
Sure.
He makes it a little bit easier though, I will say, because he's so personable and he's so friendly, and he's had literally nothing but nice things to say to us, and he's been so kind that he's more of like a calming force backstage than anything, which is really nice.
Sure.
But yeah, we met Daltrey when we opened for The Who. He was so cool, man. And I mean, you're standing next to a living legend, and like you're kind of freaking out at the same time. But there's an arena full of people there that are waiting for you to do your thing, so you don't really have too much time to think about it in the moment.
Right. Sure. Now, if how was John's reaction first time going out there in front of Slash? Because that, I mean, Slash is otherworldly as far as guitar playing goes to any guitar player.
Yeah.
So, I have to imagine he was just like, whoa.
I did a gig out in Norway. A buddy is a famous hockey player, and he met Slash. He took me to Guns N' Roses a year before we opened for Slash. Okay. And backstage at the Guns N' Roses show, there was an opportunity where I could have maybe met Slash, and then the backstage handler guy came in and said, "Hey, only 2 of you can go meet him." I told my 2 buddies to go, leave me behind. I said, I think there's just a weird feeling in my head I'm going to meet Slash one day.
Right.
And they came back and they flicked me one of Slash's pics that I kept in the back of my phone case since that day. And it was a year later to the day that our manager called and said, "Hey, you're opening for Slash, in a couple weeks." So, but to John's reaction, our manager said, "Hey, we have to submit the tunes to Slash's management company for approval. Slash listens to every band submission, and he loved you guys. So, this is what we're doing." And John just kind of stared blankly and was like, "So Slash has heard me play guitar?" And our manager was like, "Yep, he's definitely heard you play guitar." And he was just like, wow, he definitely had an internal moment of just, I don't know, self-appreciation, accomplishment, whatever you want to call it. And he was pretty pumped. And I know he had a quick little moment with Slash on that first night, and there's just an aura around that guy, man. He's such a rock star. I've never seen anything like it, honestly, not from anybody else that we've played with. I mean, he's got a whole look. He's got the chops. He's got the songs, the career, the longevity. It's just insane.
Yeah.
Insane life that guy's lived.
It definitely is. And yet, if anybody's ever met him, I've met him a couple of times, and when you get past all that to actually talk to him for 5 minutes or so, he's one of the most, like Miles, he's one of the most laid-back guys you'll ever meet.
Yep, and we sort of steer clear from him the first couple shows, just because, you don't want to fanboy out on anybody, but yeah, as we went on, everything just got more friendly, and he was so kind. And just there was one night, it was actually in Northfield, Ohio, that he was just like, "Dude, I fucking love you guys. Love what you guys are doing for rock and roll. The music's great. It's so fun listening to you guys every night. You're fucking young and kicking ass, and dude, it's just fucking awesome. So we really appreciate it." And then he went on his merry way, and I was just like, "Whoa, that was a crazy moment."
Hopefully someone had their phone open to capture that.
No, they didn't, but it's forever seared into my memory.
Sure. Definitely. Now, Mark, there's a lot of, with any newer band that comes up and makes a lot of noise real quick, there's that talk that they're going to be the next band, the next big one. And, I have personally heard with people that I've shared your music with so far, whether it's the people listening to the show or just friends or whatever, I hear this thing, since we're talking about Guns N' Roses and Slash, that you guys could be that band, much like Guns N' Roses was in the late 80s, to kind of redirect things, and there is that that style that is there. And we mentioned before, like rival Sons of Greta Van Fleet have had some success, but then here you guys come and it's like almost like you're immediately ascending. Do you A, hear that, or B, do you feel that as pressure, or just kind of like cool that people are into what we're doing?
I think it's pretty early to make that assumption. I think, like you said, there's still a ton of work to do.
Sure.
Certainly that's what we hope happens. That's 20 years down the line. But yeah, Guns N' Roses, like when you think about it, Guns N' Roses put out what, like 3 real records? Like
right.
They didn't really have that. They're just legendary.
Mm-hmm.
With a pretty small like sample size of music, whereas a band like Aerosmith, they've got decades of material that, they've been relevant in every decade up until now, which is cool. But, either way, like, I think the main goal more than anything is to inspire like our generation to rock again. I think it's just rock and roll has lost its way, and
sure,
we're trying to help get it back on track, and hopefully if that means, we'd be the next legendary rock band, then we're the next legendary rock band. That'd be awesome. I certainly think our logo is cool enough to stand the test of time, but the music is what needs to be the determining factor.
You know what, dude? And that is so true about the logo. The logo itself is a selling point for you guys. I know when when I actually met you guys, the 2 girls that I was with, they immediately were like, they wanted shirts because the logo is so cool, man. The logo is you definitely have much in the Rolling Stones kind of a way. You have something that could be very iconic forever for you guys.
For sure. And, I think that's a big thing, like with any band that's had, that legendary status, is they've had, the brand like association with a logo that is just so timeless, whether it's the Who, Aerosmith's Wings, Van Halen's got like the globe, the Stones, obviously.
Sure.
There's just, it's Guns N' Roses. Like, oh my God, who's is cooler than them?
Yeah.
But yeah, we got super lucky with our logo, and we're really proud of it. And it visually captures what the music is.
Sure.
Like to a T, which I think is pretty cool.
Absolutely, man. Well, the new record is just called Dirty Honey. It is an EP. It's out there everywhere. People should buy it, listen to it, stream it, however you hear it, because it is really, really kick-ass. And Mark, as a tradition on the show, we always let the artist pick a closing track from the record and maybe tell us a story about it to wrap the interview up. So what should we wrap up with?
From my record.
From your record, sure. And we did When I'm Gone.
I think we did When I'm Gone. So I said before, like my favorite track on the EP is Scars. So Scars sort of came about. It was a riff that John had written, it was just sort of circling around every once in a while. You revisit it, you try and work on it, whatever. And I was driving to rehearsal one day, and I just started humming to myself this, hey, don't, da, 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 da.
Right.
And I thought it was cool. I sang it to John, and he was like, that sounds awesome. Whatever that is, that's cool. We should work on that. And I sort of just figured out that it was in this tempo of the riff that John had sent to me a couple months prior, and I was sitting once we went out to the record in Australia. I was sitting out there and writing lyrics about just experiencing life and how your scars may define you, but they don't necessarily make you less of a person. It's just who you are.
Right.
So that's a little tidbit about that tune.
Very cool. Well, let's check it out right now. It is Scars. It's Dirty Honey right here on your Classic Metal Show.